Let's kneel for a word of prayer. Our loving God, we thank you that you have brought us safely through another week, that we can have the privilege of gathering together in this online space, that though we may not be together physically, that we can be one in mind and heart. We pray that you would help us, that you would encourage us, that you would lift our thoughts heavenward to understand what is taking place in spiritual realms, that we might be better equipped to fight this warfare on the earth. We know that the great controversy is wrapping up, and we pray that you would help us each one to be faithful, that we would not lose hope and courage, that we would keep on pressing on this narrow way, that you would help us to gird up our loins and to endure unto the end. We thank you now for your Holy Spirit, and we pray for a blessing. In Jesus' name, amen. So what I wanted to do today is talk about Revelation 17. But before we do that, I wanted to just talk about Revelation a little bit so that we can, I suppose, refresh our minds, and hopefully I want it to be interactive. So I'm going to pick on you. You don't speak to me. Right, without looking, what is chapter? Sorry, let's go Revelation. So Revelation, the book of Revelation, we're just going to break it down into chapters. Who wants to start? So Revelation, so actually I'm going to put chapters here. Just mark it into sections about what you think it's about. So Revelation chapter 1, or how many chapters should we put for the first bit, and what we're going to call it? So Revelation chapters 1, perhaps more than one. Where would you go to? Susan, if we break down Revelation into sections and we're going to label it, what should we do the first section, do you think? Okay.
Christ laying out the pathway, because he
Okay, speak up a little bit. It's on maximum. I think we can't hear you that well.
I think Christ is laying out the pathway as Christ speaks to the angel, and then the angel speaks to John, and John speaks to us.
Right, so that's that first one, I guess, verse 1 to 3 probably. I'm not looking, but what would you say if you were going to give me a theme for the chapter, or even more than the first chapter? What would you say? So I know that's Christ comes to John on the Isle of Patmos, which I was thinking about just now, and how wonderful that is. That we used to talk about that verse a lot, about John seeing this vision of Jesus, and how Jesus had promised that those standing there would not die until they see Christ come. And we used to say that's a type of the second coming. So here, visibly, Jesus comes to John, he sees him, and he talks with him. And to me, it's kind of confirmation that the second coming of Christ is a visible, real, face-to-face communion for us, the 144,000, because John is a type of the 144,000. We know that. So this is really encouraging that here Jesus comes to give this revelation to, as you say, first through the angel to the servant John, and it's sent and signified it by the angel. So it gives us all these signs and symbols. And what's the purpose of that? I'm getting slightly off what I was asking originally. Perhaps we'll come back to the purpose of the book of Revelation, but I'll give you a clue, Susan. If I put 1 to 3, what you're going to tell me that's about?
Look for the way Mark, since we sang the song.
Look for the way Mark. Something even easier. I'm going to put
Revelation of Jesus.
Just 2 things. Revelation chapters 1 to 3. Someone else.
7 churches.
Well done, yeah, Richard. That's what I was looking for. 7 churches. So this is the 7 churches, and then
That's in chapter 4.
in chapter
You said
4,
1 to 3.
1 to 3.
It's chapter 4, 7 churches started.
Oh,
No, but I mean, it's mentioned the 7 churches in chapter 4. You said what, chapter 1?
chapter 4. What does chapter 4 say?
Chapter or verse?
Chapter. I'm talking about chapters.
Oh, you thought
She's going by
chapters,
verses, so I'm putting chapters. Sorry, I think Natalie. Maybe that was the confusion with Susan. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just doing it by chapters. So
Okay.
if we say chapters 1 to 3, And you're saying look for the waymarks. That's probably. Do you think it meant verse? Probably Susan did. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm not very clear. So chapters 1 to 3 say 7 churches. So and then I'm going to say 4 and 5 because there's a bit of a. And what would we say 4 and 5 are? That's a bit harder. Perhaps you might have to look for this. I don't know.
4 and 5 is the inauguration, Christ's inauguration.
Christ's inauguration. Oh, that's a good one. I just put the throne of God. Shall I? Because that's easier to spell.
Yeah.
The throne of God. So we're in heaven. We're seeing the throne of God, and that's the inauguration. So I suppose you could mark the timing of that. Then you put that. When would you put that, Susan? If you're saying that's the inauguration,
7 seals.
7 seals, almost, not quite. So you're not looking, are you? That's good because it should. That's the next thing after this. But 4 and 5 seems to be this glimpse into heaven. So throne of God is 4, and then 5. 5 is another heavenly scene.
So it's heavenly sanctuary then, 4 and 5.
Yeah, it's the heavenly sanctuary, but there's a specific subject in 5, which is this. I guess you're going to put a sealed up book, and they're asking who is worthy to open the book. There's this book of, I think we've said it's kind of the history of the world, but this is a sealed book. It's sealed with 7 seals, and we say who is worthy to open the book, and then the Lamb comes forward. So we've got the Lamb of God. I'll put the Lamb here, maybe. So we've got this heavenly scene where we see God and we see the Lamb and we see this sealed book, and the Lamb is worthy of opening this book. So then Richard wants to say 7 seals, so I'll put that next. In actual fact, is it the 7 seals? Because this is chapter 6. It is 7 seals, but is it actually 7? I'm going to put in brackets 6 seals because it doesn't actually take you to the 7th. But that's the theme. I guess you still put 7 seals. There's only 6 there. And then we get chapter 7. And what's chapter 7?
144,000 and the 3 angels' message.
Yeah, 144,000. Actually, it's not 3 angels' message in this one, but it is the 144,000. And it's all those that are sealed, which is interesting because you've got the sealed books and the seals being opened. And then you've got the sealing of the 144,000. So you could put sealing there, I think. And then we've got chapter 8. I don't know if we link that to, what would we say? Probably 8 and 9. Is that right? Somebody check. What we're going to say this is. We know 9, don't we? Perhaps we're not so familiar with 8. Andres, do you know? As Richard keeps answering. Do you know? We can't hear you if you're talking. I don't know if you're unmuted. Looks like you did. Oh. Okay. I don't know if Leon can speak. You not? Who else is there? Simba, help us out. What's 8 and 9? We know 9. People should know 9. Revelation 9.
So trumpets.
The trumpets. Well done, Leon. How many? 7 trumpets. Yeah. And of course, you've got the 3 woes in there as well, but it's the 7 trumpets overall. And then we get to Revelation 10. And what's that?
The little book.
The little book. Yes. I'm going to put this is
7 thunders.
7 thunders. Yeah. God's message. It's messengers. It's the first angel. It's the little book.
Daniel.
7 thunders. Yes. Daniel, little book. It's a few books, aren't there? That's my little book. So this is what we say is the Millerite history, but it's
And the 7 angels, isn't it?
7th angel shall begin to sound. Is that the? Yeah, it's the 7th
Revelation
angel.
10,
Which angel is that now? Is that the trumpet angel? Is the 7th trumpet? It's not
Yeah,
7th
it
trumpet.
began to sound, mystery of God should be finished.
Yeah, so that's the 7th trumpet. So really, I guess you could say this is 6 trumpets, isn't it? Because the 7th trumpet
Goes in the
so it's
next
very
verse.
similar in the sense that it's really only 6, and then you have this break, and there's the 7th one. So because with the seals, the 7th seal is in the beginning of chapter 8, and it's similar with the 7 trumpets. I think the 7th trumpet is in chapter 11. Here you get, it's quite interesting, that pattern. Maybe I don't want to overwhelm with detail, but there is a pattern there. So Revelation 11, what's that? I'm going to put the French Revolution.
2 witnesses.
Oh, what did you say?
2 witnesses.
2 witnesses. Yes. So we've got 2 witnesses there. Let's put that in brackets. Okay. And then 12, 13, 14. Yeah, 12 and 13. I'll put 12 and then I'll put, yeah, okay, let's do it that way. Okay, so what's in 12?
Emma, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I think I now can. No, I was just testing the speaker. Sorry. I couldn't speak before.
Oh no, that's all right. I think you couldn't because it was unmuted. I couldn't hear you. Okay.
Yeah.
There's 10 works in there.
The 2-horned beast.
2-horned beast, not in 12.
Dark
Okay, you're in
Ages.
13. You're in 13. aren't you?
1260.
Who said what?
Where a woman in 12.
The woman. Let's put God's church. Now, I'm very aware that there's obviously gendered imagery in here. We're going to have to go into this because I want to touch Revelation 17 and it's talking about the woman and the whore. And this is all very sexist, but I think we're going to have to go with that imagery for now. So this is all about God's church and the warfare of the great controversy, fleeing into the wilderness. The dragon is attacking the church, but it's about the woman, the story of the woman. And 13, Debbie said, what did Debbie say? The beast. Well, I'm going to put the beast.
2-horned beast.
2-horned beast is also the first beast. So we've got a beast
Beast and image of the beast.
and the image of the beast, yeah, and the 2-horned beast.
7 heads formed.
And what did we say that was in the past? And I'm not saying we haven't changed it, but
Republicanism and Protestantism.
oh, the horns,
Two
yeah.
horns,
But
yeah.
what about the beast? So we know what's this beast and what's this beast?
Papacy.
Straightforward. Okay, so now he says, so this is papacy, and what's this beast?
Protestantism and Republicanism.
It is, and what do we call that? She said
So
Protestantism, Republican,
USA.
USA, yeah. USA. So we'd say this is the papacy in the USA. So you've got God's church, papacy in the USA. Maybe I'll get a different colour. It's going to get a blue. I want to do something here. Okay, so we've got 12 and 13, and then we've got 14. And what's 14? Someone already said
3
this one.
angels' message.
3 angels' messages. So I'm going to put the beginning of 14, we get the 144,000 again. So let's put like God's church, 3 angels' messages. So again, this is God's church. We can see that there. I'm going to put the woman. Revelation 12. God's church. Okay, so 15 and possibly 16. Are we going to do 15 separately, actually? Or maybe I put it together. Can't remember what I did before.
Plagues.
Yeah, the plagues are 16, I think. So let's see what are we going to say 15 is?
15 is the last plagues.
Okay, yeah, let's
The
put 15
seven
and
plagues.
16. Let's
Yeah.
put 15 and 16 together. So
No, you can't.
how many plagues?
You can't separate 16 and 17.
16 and 17. Oh, she doesn't want to separate 16 and 17. I'm going to, for the purpose of this exercise, plagues. I'm going to run out of space on it. So we've got 7 plagues, and you see there's 7s everywhere, isn't it? 7 plagues, and then 17. Now we used to link 17, 13, and no, we didn't. We used to link 12 and 13 with 17 and 18.
The Song of Moses, 15.
Yes, so you do see this victorious group of people. You see the 144,000 there at the beginning of 15, singing the Song of Moses. It's kind of a follow-on almost from 144 from the 14. So they're sort of, yeah, but I suppose overall we're going to put 7 plagues, perhaps Song of Moses at the beginning. But I think that's not the theme of the 2 chapters, so perhaps that's the hope in the middle of it. So 12 and 13 is almost like a parallel to 17 and 18, but it's back to front. Sorry, wrong way, not that one. 13 and 14. So we could use 12 actually because it's God's church, but 13 and 14 we see God's church. So we see what the beast is doing, and then we see what God's people are doing, and it's similar in 17 and 18 to a degree, although 18 has more detail. So we've got 17 is what we're going to say.
Babylon the Great.
Babylon. So we could put beast. I think we could say beast, Babylon. And I guess 10 kings, or the woman and the 10 kings. What did we say that was? So here we have the papacy and the USA. Thinking about threefold union,
The UN.
we'd say this was the papacy and the UN, as Natalie just said. So we see this is another angle on this story. So we have the papacy and the USA in this one, and then we have the papacy and the UN in 17. And then for 18,
You got
we have-
three. You got Mega in 16 as well. The three unclean spirits.
I'm going to put that out. Should we put loud cry? What should we put?
Well, to leave Babylon, isn't it? It's a call to leave Babylon, isn't it? 18.
Okay, this is the
Babylon's fallen.
second angel's message. So this is what God's people are doing, but it's also judgment
Is that where the horses are?
of the beast. No, that's the next one. The horses. We're coming to the horses. Now, this is a bit more vague for me, so the last bit, someone else can help. 19. And maybe we do 19 to 21. Do we do it all the way through or not? There's a bit more detail in there. 19 is the white horse, isn't it? It's Christ on the white horse.
You're saying second advent for that, or?
Conquering and to conquer. Yes.
Yeah,
perhaps that's-
Yeah, conquest of the earth.
Is that the
Sorry, mate.
Bible says? And then 20 and 21, or no? Or do we want to put 20 and then 21? 20,000 years?
Bottomless pit.
Bottomless pit,
yeah.
1,000 years?
Yep.
Is 21 the New Jerusalem?
Yeah. And then 21 is new heaven and earth, I think we put there. Perhaps new heavens. Oh, pen, sorry. About 3 pens on here. It's still not very good.
Go back over.
Yeah, I think it's good to see this
We
structure.
need
So
more studies on these things. Going back.
okay, so when we look at this in the light of how we speak now about internal and external. So we used to break it down. So we used to see this pattern here. Elder Jeff brought that out, that you see what the beast power or what Satan's doing, then you see what God's doing. So 13 and 14, and then 17, you see what Satan's doing, different angle on it, papers in the UN, and see what God's people are doing. And we saw that pattern. We saw it's about the woman, it's about the true woman and the false woman. So you've got the godly woman and the apostate woman called a whore. Counterfeit, yeah. Anybody else got anything they want to add to that? I'm just going to go through.
Isn't there
And perhaps
22
not.
chapters?
What's that?
Not really. Isn't there 22 chapters? Let me
Oh,
look
22
for
in this one. Sorry, go on, last one. So it's 22. Oh, it's 21 and 22, isn't it? I think. So would you say they're both about the new heaven and the new earth, or do we want to break it down a bit further?
I think 22 talks about those who are filthy, let them remain filthy still.
That's true. I was going to say close of probation for one of them. So the river of life, 22. Yeah. So perhaps it's still new heaven and new earth, I think, but it's close of probation as well. That's kind of like finishing off the great controversy, sealing up the book. Behold, I come quickly. So what's the last? So what's the purpose of this if we go from the beginning verses and then we see? So the last bit is surely I come quickly. And so Christ is promising to come quickly at the end and comes at the beginning to John. So it's kind of a bit of a parallel there. So we could put perhaps second advent, promise of the second advent. So what's the purpose of Revelation? Why do we need all this? Anybody?
Say that again, sorry.
What's the purpose of it, the book? I mean, it's sort of, if we read Revelation chapter 1, it's the revelation of Jesus Christ. So it's the revelation of God, something revealed by God to us. And why?
It's
Why?
also to unlock prophecy.
Yeah.
Well,
So Natalie says to unlock prophecy. Well, it is a prophecy,
Revelation and
isn't it?
Daniel are to unlock prophecy. It is the
Revelation and
prophecy.
Daniel. Yeah, Revelation and Daniel go together. We know that they're kind of complements to each other. And Natalie said to unlock prophecy. Well, they are prophecy, but it's to explain it to us. So that
Yeah,
what's the
yeah.
purpose? So
Yeah,
that
to explain this.
so we know where we are. I think you said. So we know.
If, if you think about the word revelation, revelation means to reveal something.
Yeah.
So that's why all that is under revelation. It's revealing something to us that's going to take place.
And then there's a promise in verse 3, blessed are they that read us and they that hear the words of this prophecy and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand.
Mm.
So there's something about understanding the time and keeping the things that are written, being faithful to them, having understanding of them, because ultimately we want to be restored. I suppose go back to heaven with Christ, go back with Christ. That's why Christ is coming, to take us back home, because we've lost our kingdom. And when you look at this pattern, I suppose if you go to I can't see everyone. Seven churches is an internal message. So if we go internal, because this is for us as the church, and then we get this heavenly kind of picture to, I think, to encourage us really, because now we see a heavenly scene. We see that we're connected to heaven. It's not just about earth and what's happening on earth. It's about heaven and this controversy and the whole book being unsealed. And then with the unsealing of the book, we see external events. So this is all what's happening in the world to Christians under the horses. And then we have internal with 144,000. So we see this group of people who are sealed now and saved, the great multitude. And then we get the trumpets, which is external. And that's the history of the warfare between those tribes and Rome, I guess, between what's the Ottoman, I guess Ottoman Turks, Islam, and then the last three. And we've taught it as they attack the armies of Rome. So there's this warfare on earth that impacts us. And then we see God's message again, which is internal, what God's people are doing. And the French Revolution is external. So this is what's happening in the world at the time of the end. So in a way, it's chronological because it's the history of the world, the churches, and then the seals, the history of the world, the trumpets is the warfare in the world. And then coming down to the French Revolution, we're coming into the 1798 time period here. And then we get the history of God's church, which is kind of flashed back again internally, but focusing on the time of Christ and the warfare there with Satan. And then we get the history of the beast, which is obviously moving us down through the kingdoms to the time of the 1260. So we could say that's external. And then again, internal here, external plagues,
Mega.
external 17. And this is progressive too, isn't it? I guess you could say sixth and seventh kingdom. So we've got this interaction between the rise of the papacy the rise of USA from 1798, which links to French Revolution. So all this is kind of time of the end time period. And then judgment, I guess, comes into external as well as internal. So this is where they start to, I mean, it merges a bit. This is a general overview. Don't know how we'd leave the last bit, but that's internal. And then this bit, I suppose it brings it all together. The second advent, the 1,000 years, the new heaven and the new earth. This is when we finally, I guess, becomes the external and the internal becomes one. So now we're physically with Christ and all things are made new. So this is external and internal are joined together, perhaps we could say, and there's peace instead of warfare. Yay. I know. We
Emma,
long for that day. Yes.
I've had a question on my mind recently.
Mhm.
When you say external and internal, what are they precisely relating to? Exactly. Is it external is dealing with political stuff? Internal is dealing with the gospel? Is it that external is everything outside of God's church? and internal is solely related to God's church? What about if the church interacts with the world? Yeah, what do we mean exactly with external and internal?
Yeah.
Prophecy as well, external.
So Natalie, what you
You
saying?
see,
It's
you
prophecy.
see the delineation of events of prophecy externally taking place.
So Natalie's saying you see the delineation of events externally taking place, and it's prophecy. So I suppose we could say it's everything happening in the world, but we know that it's selective. So it's all the events that are connected to God's people. So
Yeah.
Babylon, Medo, Persia, Greece, and Rome are the specific 4 kingdoms that God puts into prophecy. So I suppose when we say external, we don't want the noise. We want to know externally what's happening in the world and how it impacts God's people, because it's part of the great controversy. So I would have said on a general level, internal is what's happening with the church, and external is the events on the line. They're in the world, historical events.
The
So
two major counterfeits meet confronting each other in war.
yeah, which is external, is the warfare that's going on, which obviously impacts us. But internally, generally, is the message of the church or what's happening with the church. So, like, you know, the messages to the churches, and the seals is what's happening in the world. Even though, obviously, all this is for us. Revelation, the Book of Revelation, is an internal thing on one level. So, what were your thoughts, Curtis? How were you
So-
seeing that would please you with that question?
So when the church internal, as you've described it, interacts with the world, what would you categorize that at? Because I'm just looking at Revelation 18 that you've got there, and Revelation 13 that you have there, because those are stories about how 2 entities interact with each other, the church and the work of the image of the beast, the false prophet, and 18, it's the internal giving a message about the beast, which you've put down as external. So I'm mentally just trying to conceptualize what exactly the difference is.
Yeah, and obviously I put external because I think most of the chapter is judgment of the beast. It's only the first few verses that are the second angel's message, but that's the key. That's key for us to understand what we're doing in this story, I suppose. So I suppose I should put internal there as well, actually. But the thrust of that story there is, well, maybe it isn't, maybe it is internal. So perhaps
No,
we
it
could
is
put internal
judgment.
as well.
Second angel is Babylon's fallen, which is a judgment, and it's an internal message.
Yeah, but it's judgment. The most of the chapter is the judgment of the papacy or the whore or the beast or however we describe it now. But yes, that's internal because it's the message we're giving as well. So I think it's obviously there's a bit of overlap, because even in say a chapter where there's something internal, God's church, it's all about God's church in the world and the history of the God's church there. So it's very there's crossover, but as a general structure, we know that there are external events on a line, but there's internal message. That's how we've taught it. So we have a message about those external events in order to understand them and our interaction with them. So it's probably not clear though what our interaction is it? Because we used to think that we would have some interaction, but we're not going to have any interaction. It seems like we're not having much interaction. This is much more about us getting ready to stand through the eternity, it seems.
Depends where you say you are.
So, bearing all that, I guess, background in mind, is there anything else we remember from all these studies? I mean, there's a huge lot of information up here that we could delve into, but I wanted to look at 17 in the light of the fact that I think we're either at this point or we're getting to that point if we feel that we're in at least the Sunday Law time period where we're going to expect to see this 7th kingdom. We know it's the rise of the 7th kingdom, which is where the 10 kings come in. So if we put Revelation 17, I want to read this together. So I think some of the questions I'm asking about this are what we used to say about it was, obviously and we still might be saying that, what the beast is, what the woman is. These are questions I think we need to answer about how we see that now in terms of the role of the papacy or the role of America. being king of the north. So, and I think that's something I just wanted to revisit Revelation 17 for that reason, really. So let's go to Revelation 17, and if someone could read verses 1 to 6, I think.
The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass.
Oh no,
Um,
Revelation 17, Debs.
Oh, sorry, Revelation 17, beg your
17,
pardon.
1 to 6.
Yeah, beg your pardon. I was reading Revelation 1, wasn't I?
It's all
Yeah,
right.
bear with me. Yeah, bear with me. I'll get there in a minute. Beg your pardon.
6.
Right, and there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-coloured beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet colour, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration.
So I suppose the first question is, and Obsidri, if you can answer this one, who is this 7th angel? Who is this angel? It says one of the 7 angels. Who are these 7 angels which have the 7 vials? And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials and talked with me, saying, Come hither. Do you know? Cedri, do you know? Brian? What do we know about these 7 angels? If you don't know, go back to 16. I don't know if we know who it is. Natalie's saying, is it Gabriel? Well, it says one of the 7 angels. So who are these 7 angels in the context of Revelation 17? Anybody?
It says it on the second angel poured out his vial, verse 3 of 16.
Verse 3 of 16. Yeah, okay. So
It's the second.
the second angel poured out his vial. How many angels have vials?
I think it's Revelation 15 verse 6
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at 15:6. What does that say?
says, and this 7 angels and the 7 angels came out of the temple, having the 7 plagues, clothed in pure and white linen, having their breasts girded with golden girdles.
And 7. Read 7 as well, Andres.
And one of the 4 beasts gave unto the 7 angels 7 golden vials full of the wrath of God, who liveth forever and ever.
Yeah. So these are 7 angels that have come out of the temple, and they have 7 plagues, having the 7 plagues. And then it says one of the 4 beasts gave to the 7 angels 7 golden vials full of the wrath of God. Is that, do you think, Andreas, repeating in large, or is that separate from the plagues? Do we know from this?
I think it's the what do you mean repeat in large, like verse 6 and 7?
6 and 7. So you've got these 7 angels, they come out of the temple, and it says having 7 plagues. So it seems like they're coming out of the temple. They've already got 7 plagues, clothed in pure and white linen and having their breasts girded with golden girdles. And then one of the 4 beasts gave unto the 7 angels 7 golden vials full of the wrath of God, who liveth forever and ever. So are these vials full of the plagues, or do they already have the plagues and they've got vials as well?
I never thought about that. I think I used,
just noticed
yeah,
that.
I used to see it as repeating. I mean, didn't think about it properly, but I thought it was repeating in large. But now that you ask, I'm not sure.
Okay, so let's see if we can prove it. 8 says, and the temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God and from God's power, and no person was able to enter into the temple till the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were fulfilled. So here it just says the 7 plagues of the angels. Let's see if 16, anyone got a verse that helps us?
I was thinking about the word vial. What does the word vial mean? and it means a shallow cup. So can they not carry the plagues in that vial?
Yes, and I think that's what we assumed up to now. But the way it's worded there in 15 seems like they've already got the plagues and then they get given vials. So is it just describing how they carry those plagues? Is it so it's repeat and enlarge? It's saying they've got the plagues, then it says this is how they got them, basically. It's
I think
describing
it is.
how the angels
I
gave
think it
them the
is.
vials with the plagues in. Because 16 verse 2 says, and the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped the image. And the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea. So these are the plagues being poured out, and it's in the vial.
Through the vial, yeah. That's
So
what
I think
think.
we can say, as Andres was saying, basically he'd not thought about it, but he's seeing that. I think we thought it's just repeat and enlarge. It's just giving us more detail on how they got those plagues. So they came out clothed in linen and girded up, and then they're given these plagues by this fourth beast. Actually, is the fourth beast? That's the question. I think the fourth beast isn't that. And one of the four beasts gave the seven angels golden vials who liveth forever and ever. Isn't the beast in the temple anyway? This is another question. Seven angels having the seven last plagues from them is, I suppose, verse 1 in 15. I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, seven angels having the seven last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God. So it links, we know the plagues are the wrath of God, and it says here that the vials are full of the wrath of God, so we can see that it is the plagues. So I'm not clear. I think from the four beasts we last saw were in chapter 4, and I think they're in the temple worshipping God. So if they're in the temple worshipping God, then they gave the angels these vials before they left the temple. And I'm not sure if any of this is that important to this study, but I think it's important to read carefully. So just getting some clarity there on what's going on. But perhaps we could look into that another time. I didn't plan to go there. So so we know that there came one of the seven angels which had the seven vials. So we don't know which one it is that's coming to John in chapter 17 and talked with him saying, come hither, I'm going to show you the judgment of the great whore. But if you go back to 16, the last plague, the last vial, the seventh one, starts in verse 17, and it says, the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne saying, it is done. And there were voices and thunders and lightnings. There was a great earthquake, such as not since people were on the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And this last plague is saying everything's finished now. The great city is divided into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. So this seventh plague is judgment on Babylon. So I'm going to use speculation and say, the second one is as well.
Wouldn't you put up there the judgment of the beast or of Babylon?
Yeah.
The second angel.
So that's the second angel, but that's in the three
You're on about
angels.
second.
So this one that's coming, this angel that's coming with a vial, we know it's one of the seven, we don't know which one, but if we go back to this chapter 16,
The same seven.
it's the same, it's the seventh angel that's pouring out this vial on Babylon. Babylon's coming up in remembrance, every island fled away, the mountains were not found, and there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent. And people blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail. Although this is a plague of hail, it does say that the city is divided into three parts, and it comes up in remembrance before God.
That's not a literal earthquake, is it? Like the Los Angeles Vault?
I'm not sure. I don't think so, because we see earthquakes at other places in Revelation that it's kind of
says such as never has been since men.
yeah.
So the strife, it's strife.
So it could be literal. Voices, thunders, lightnings. But when we see this voices, thunders, lightnings, and a great earthquake, we see that elsewhere in Revelation 11 at the opening of the Ark of the Covenant, and I don't think that's a literal earthquake there. So I suppose we have to use the context to wonder about that, because the plague itself here is the hail. That's what we've always said it is. I mean, it could be more than just the hail, but it seems judgment on Babylon in the form of this hail, which is exceeding great.
Could we also say, Emma, you know, when they use when we looked at how Jerusalem was destroyed, obviously judgment's going to be coming on the USA, I think. And when we look back in history and we see how God has destroyed a nation, we see that he uses other nations to destroy it, like he used Babylon to destroy Jerusalem. In my own mind, I think that's what God's going to do to the USA.
quite possible. How that's going to look. And because we do have a picture of it being cataclysmic at the second advent, when do we mark this as the second coming, when the hail's falling? It's like the destruction of the world under the, I don't know. I'm not sure about the plagues, what that's going to look like, because I think we've alluded to plagues under COVID. We said this is a type of what it might look like when a plague comes, because it happened straight after the close of probation for the priests. 2020, it's following 2019. So it gives us some idea perhaps of literal problems in the earth with disease and strife. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts about that. I don't think
we can see who, I'm not saying it's now, but we can see who Trump's putting in place of health and safety of, disease and medicine and all those things now. Is going to be, you're going to have more diseases letting
loose
and not enough restraint on care. So I think these things will only get worse as time goes on.
Did everyone hear that?
Yeah, that's already taken place with genetically
Yeah.
modifying the mosquitoes and the moths and that are eating all the cabbages. In Brazil, there's babies with smaller heads. The percentage is taking place because of genetically messing around with the mosquitoes. And all the females should have died, but some of them have carried on living.
And Emma, what do you think about the
linked it to
the? Oh,
this
sorry.
deformity.
Hold on. Did you finish, Richard?
Yeah, and they've linked it to this deformity in babies' heads being much smaller in areas
Hmm.
of Brazil than what they should have been. So, I mean, it's going to, people's hearts are really going to start collapsing.
Emma, what I was trying to bring out was what do you think about the threats from Putin? He's already talked about a nuclear missile, and he's been threatening the UK and the USA. And also, Trump has already had threats from Iran. So these are powerful nations. What do you think about those? I believe that whatever Trump says, not Trump, Putin says, we shouldn't take for granted. I think that he'll carry out what he says he's going to do. So we can see that there are threats there already. I think China could be, I think Russia could be, and Iran could be against the USA.
We know the world is unstable in the nations in that sense. But I think this point about the plagues, I suppose Natalie's point was that the person that Trump's putting into power as a health minister is already, we know, is very lax about, say, COVID and everything, so that and viruses. So when something like COVID happens again, it'll be worse pandemic if it happens again. I don't know if we can say if or when. I think there's a lot of talk that it will happen again. That it won't be managed so well. It wasn't managed first time that well, and then it will be even worse. So
and also like polio, polio. The way they think about certain things like medicine and Dr. Oz and just the way they're thinking, I think, and the food and who's looking after safe food and water and things like that is going to get a lot worse medically and a lot more deaths through things like that. I can see that happen.
The food and water is going to get worse, and there's going to be more deaths through.
They're taking risks now where what they're doing hasn't been tested, and then they're finding out after they've decided to do it to solve a problem. It creates a bigger problem.
Yeah, and mindset.
Yeah, I think with Kennedy in place, that he doesn't believe in the vaccines, does he?
No, I don't think so, no.
And there's a lot of people that don't, especially with a lot of more information coming out. So if there's another plague, not a lot of people will go for any kind of vaccination.
So are we seeing, yeah.
Can I ask, I'm kind of lost. So I was trying to see when you said the four beasts, what they were, and I think I went into a rabbit hole, and then I came back, and I'm not sure like what we're speaking about.
Okay, sorry, I said maybe we can look into that later. I probably diverted you off to the four beasts and where they're from and what they're doing. There's so much imagery in here. So then we're just looking at the plagues and saying, I think we've got not sidetracked, but we're diverting, I guess, into, are these plagues, what they're going to look like? Do we know what they're going to look like? Because Richard's question was, is this earthquake literal? When we saw this earthquake happening under this judgment in 16, where it says earthquake and hail, and I think it's in what verse was it?
19.
16, 18.
Yeah.
And it says there were voices, thunders, lightnings, and a great earthquake. And I was saying, I think we see that in Revelation 11 at the end when the Ark of the Covenant's open. It's the same wording. Yeah, it is 11:19. And the temple of God was open in heaven. There was seen in his temple the ark of the testament, and there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and a great hail. And that's marked in our Millerite history as the 1844
I was
when
going to say that.
Christ moves into the most holy place and they see the Ark of the Covenant
Was there an
and they
earthquake then?
recognize the Sabbath. Was there an earthquake?
There was
Natalie
one.
says.
There was
The
one.
Lisbon
No, but
before.
not that we know
Yeah.
about. The Lisbon earthquake was way back. That was prophesied in
Mm.
Revelation 6. So that was a proper earthquake. But this, I think, is a phrase, this London lightnings, voices and thunderings and an earthquake, which goes back to Mount Sinai. So that's the link, I think, with the
God
temple of God being
speaking.
open, God speaking. The
Mm.
voice of God is speaking to us. So I think I'm leaning towards it's not a little earthquake in 16, but that got us into, well, what are these plagues? If it's not a literal earthquake, or is it literal hail? Is it, what do the plagues look like? And then we got talking about COVID and how we thought that was a type of a plague because of the close of probation of the priest being in 2019 and COVID hits in 2020. So we thought, okay, this is a typology. I don't know if type's the right word, but it's an indication of what the plagues could look like. So then we were talking about America and the state of it now and how they would manage a plague if it was to happen again, or a COVID situation, a disease control thing. It's not going to be as well managed. It will be much worse.
But it's going to be divided into 3 different ethoses, isn't it?
What is?
Because it says, and that great city was divided into 3 parts.
Yes, I'm not sure what that means either. If anyone has any light on that. We know that
It's
we
the
have
3
the
unclean
Israel.
spirits that make up MAGA. They're in union to get Trump in, or to gather up the kings, but they're not in union amongst themselves, are they?
So
They
are we saying those 3 parts? I know
patriarchy
we've
in
got the
common.
dragon, the beast, and the false prophet in general terms. And I know Elder Terry touched on what those things could be now in the camp meeting. I haven't gone back and looked at that in the ICM. So I don't know if that's the 3, it's like the threefold union. This is why it's divided into 3 parts in this verse in 19. That's possible. But my point about that was that it's judgment on Babylon that's coming. And this first verse of 17 says, I will show thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, who we saw from the verses below is Babylon, verse 5. On her forehead was written Mystery Babylon the Great. So this is the judgment of Babylon. This angel's coming to tell John about. So it's kind of speculation that it's the 7th angel with the vial that's pouring out the judgment on Babylon.
Because verse 20 as well gives a literal connotation, or the mountains, or the heads, the leaders, I suppose. And every island fled away, and the mountains were not found.
Yeah, that's end of the world kind of, like Isaiah has
Imagery. But
yeah,
like a mountain is like leadership, isn't it? Or
yeah, we get the mountain in
holy
Unity.
mountain. Yeah.
The mountains.
But why would it be speculation to say it's the seventh plague? Isn't it like literally saying that the 7 angels which have the 7 vials?
In verse 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it says one of the 7 angels, and I was saying, which one is it? Do we know which one it is? Why does it say, and the 7th angel which had the 7th vial? Talk to me. I wasn't sure if it was the 7th one. I was assuming it was, and then when I saw it says one of the 7 angels, I thought, well, how do we know which one? And I'm trying to show some
Gotcha.
logic
Yeah.
that it's the one that's throwing, punishing Babylon. But one of the others isn't the darkness. The darkness comes on Babylon. Which plague is that? Is that plague 5? On the 5th plague, angel brought the seat of the beast is verse 10. So some of these, it seems to be aimed at Babylon anyway, some of the vials, even though, so that one is the 5th one and the 7th one. Interesting. Is it only the 5th and the 7th? There's a 5th, 7th thing going on here. The 6th one is on the Review Euphrates, which is obviously the river that fed Babylon, and it's the support system. And it talks about the ways of the kings of the east. So a lot of this imagery of these plagues is on Babylon anyway. So I'm not sure if it's that one, but this one comes and says, I will show thee the judgment of the great whore. So we've got the word whore. We've got the kings of the earth committing fornication and carried me away in the spirit in the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a skull of beast. So why is it important to know when John's seeing this vision then? Where are we going to place it? Does anybody know?
When you say place it on his line, our line?
Where are we going to place it in terms of historically, the context of it? So now it says in verse 3 that John is carried away in the spirit into the wilderness. Which wilderness is this?
Ellen White, didn't you say it's 1260.
So Natalie's saying Ellen White, doesn't she say it's the 1260? So I'm going to say up here, so we've got wilderness. And 1260. Can you give me a verse which would show me that the wilderness is link the wilderness to 1260? 725? Not quite. In Revelation. How are we going to find out what wilderness is from the book of Revelation itself? Does anybody remember how we used to do this going back to the day?
It's darkness, isn't it?
I think it's Revelation 13, isn't it? Where the woman flies to the wilderness for
Is that 13 or which one is it?
12, sorry,
12.
12. Yeah.
Can you find it? You got a verse in 12 that would show us
Is
what's
it
going on?
17:3?
It's what?
Revelation 17:3.
That's the one we're doing here. So we're looking at 17 and we're saying, where is John when he's having this vision in
He's
17?
in Patmos.
Verse 6.
12, 14.
He's in Patmos, but he's been taken into the wilderness. So read it, Andreas. It's got 12:14. What's that say?
And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and a half a time from the face of the serpent.
You can
Right, so
also
what's happening here? What's
oh,
happening?
no, Revelation 12:6.
And
This is
verse
12.
6.
And verse 6. Okay, so Debbie, you don't want to read verse 6? We'll put
Yes,
6.
it says, and the woman
Well,
fled into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 2,103 days.
So the
2 months.
1260 is given how many times in scripture? Does anybody know?
3.
We should remember this. No.
More. In
More.
Revelation, it's
4.
3 in Revelation.
4.
Times dividing the time, 42 months, and 1,260.
Where else is it found? Revelation goes with Daniel.
Then 725.
Daniel 725. Natalie's got. So we've got, let's just do this. So we've got the 1260 here. So the 1260 is mentioned 7 times. We should know that in scripture. So that's the easy way to remember it. It's written in several ways though. So here in chapter 12, we have it. Actually, I think we have it 3 times. We might have it 3rd time in 13. So I think you might be right with 13 as well. We'll have a look again in a minute. But this chapter is about the woman giving birth to Christ and Satan trying to destroy Christ at the birth, and then goes into the great controversy and how the woman flees in verse 6 into the wilderness, where she had a place prepared that she should be fed there for the 1260. So she's in the wilderness for the 1260. So the wilderness is a symbol of the 1260. She's fled there for safety for the 2,300. So it says 1,203 days, and a score is 20. So we know that's 60. So 1,200. So it's 1,260 days. And then it goes into the warfare with Satan being cast out and coming to earth to carry on this warfare.
You have a 40 and 2 months in verse 5 in Revelation 13.
Yeah, Revelation 13:5. So we've got, I'll just put the references here, Revelation 13:5. And that's 42 months. But even in Revelation 12 itself, it says it as slightly differently in 14, doesn't it? 13? What did I just say? 14, yeah. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle that she might fly into the wilderness. So again, we see she's in the wilderness, into her place where she's nourished, which is fed for a time, times, and half a time. So it's very similar wording to verse 6, and we use those 2 verses to explain each other. So we can tell that a time, times, and a dividing of time, or a half a time, is the 1260, because a time is a year, and we get 3.5 years, which is 1260
The
days.
times are the ones that are in Daniel, isn't it?
Yes. So we've got 3 references, 12, 14, 6, 13, 5. There's another one in Revelation. Does anyone know where it is?
No, 26. No,
26.
No. I think there's Leviticus. I think it's 7 times.
Oh, Leviticus 20. Okay.
7 times.
Yeah. No, it's
Revelation.
Revelation. So we've got the 2 in 12, 1 in 13, 1 in
11.
11. Yes. Which verse? Is that Charity?
Yeah, it's 11.
11 verse.
So I don't remember the verse. I know it's 11.
Very near the beginning. Measuring the temple, and verse 2, but the court which is without the temple leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the
42 months.
Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot for 42 months. So again, it's 42 months in verse 2. So again, we get this, it's really solidified. It's so important that it's mentioned 7 times. This prophecy is pivotal to the 2520 and to the whole understanding of the beast power, I guess. It's
And
so
you've got
connected to the
Revelation,
beast.
you've got the number, you've got verse 3 as well, Revelation 11, 2 and 3, because then you've got the 3
Yes, 2,300. That's right. There's another one in verse 3. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 2 in Daniel.
Daniel 7:25.
Daniel 7:25, Natalie says. Somebody check that. Just to prove it. And we should know these. We knew these back in the day. I know the other one, I think. I'm guessing without looking, it's 12, 5 or 6. I think it's 6.
Are we looking in where are we looking now?
7:24. We're
Daniel.
looking in Daniel for the 1260. So Daniel 7:25. He shall speak great words against the Most High, shall wear out the saints of the Most High, think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time, times, and dividing of time. So it's very similar language to Revelation 12. Time, times, dividing of time in 7:25. So that shows that the papacy is going to be persecuting God's people in that time. And this is why this woman is fled into the wilderness, because she's being persecuted. And the other one in Daniel, I'll give you a clue. The last chapter.
Is it 12:11 or that's the daily?
That's the daily. Oh, but it is. No, that's the 1290. You're right. It's the daily 1211. Well remembered. That's 1290. So we've got 1260 as well in this one. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it is. I was right. I thought it was. It's 12. Now, I should be able to remember this one. It's 12 is a very significant Bible number, and so is 7. It's 12:7. So this is where sees Christ. And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand unto heaven, and swear by God that liveth forever, that it shall be for a time, times and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. So again, it's links to this kind of 2520 language of scattering. 12:7. So those are the 7 times, the 7 references to the 1260, which is half of the 7 times. So it's all linked together that we can remember it that way. So we're back in Revelation 17, and we can link it back, obviously, to chapter 12, chapter 13, because of this time prophecy and her being in the wilderness. So John is carried away in the spirit into the wilderness and sees this woman on a scarlet-coloured beast, full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So we see this beast several places. So the kings of the earth committed fornication, they haven't said it. So we haven't done the fornication of the kings in verse 2, but this is verse, what we in verse 3. So this is verse 3. Let's just put verse
Revelation
3.
what?
Revelation 17, verse 3. So so we've got scarlet-coloured beast, scarlet beast.
And 10 heads and 10.
And we've got all this detail, 7 heads. And on this one, there's a woman on it. 7 heads and 10 horns.
Just church.
And woman. What are the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns? Where else do we see this beast? How do we know what this is?
Revelation 13.
So Natalie says Revelation 13, and we see verse 1. So let's see if there's any difference here.
Kind of repeat the 7 heads and 7 horns.
Beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. So this one has blasphemy on the heads. Does it have blasphemy on the heads on the other one? It just says full of the names of blasphemy on the other one. It doesn't specify heads, but there's enough connection there. And it says there are 10 crowns on the 10 horns. So this one has 10 crowns. I remember back in the day trying to work out what this was and people going back and forth about crowns and heads and horns. And so the speculation is, I suppose, that these 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. So it says 10 crowns on the horns. On the horns. Which is interesting.
Did it say 7 somewhere?
It
7,
does. Now, where's
7.
that beast? Where's the other time we see the beast?
Was that Daniel?
No,
Oh.
it's still in Revelation.
Oh,
16.
Yeah, taking us back, says Natalie. I know. It might be Daniel. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is Daniel. Because what do we see in 12? We see the great dragon in. Where does it say it? No, it does. It's Revelation 12:3. So Revelation 12:3. So what's different about this one, Natalie? Behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. So this one has 7 crowns, which is what Richard just said, on the heads.
Yeah, so one says horns, one says heads. To be honest, it's just all nations and kingdoms. Isn't it?
Nations and kingdoms, yeah. And of course,
Still says 10 horns.
was that?
Yes.
It does say 10 horns. Yeah, I'm just pointing out the differences. So they've all got 7 heads and 10 horns. So that's the commonality here. 7 heads and 10 horns. That's in all of them. But this one has 10 crowns on the horns, and this one has 7 crowns on the heads. So that's the difference. There's something about showing authority or power in a different way to emphasize some different point there. And I leave you to think about what that is.
That's like kings, rulers, and governors.
What's that? Kings, rulers, and governors. So let's go to 17 and see if we can unpackage 17, because 17, does it have crowns or not? I don't think 17 has crowns at this point. So it has 7 heads and 10 horns, and it doesn't mention crowns. So in 17, I'm going to put here no crowns at the moment because I don't think it does, but check it and tell me if I'm wrong. No crowns. So this is 17. I'll just put here 17 to make it clear relation. 17. 3. Oh, is it 3? Yeah. So they both got blasphemy. Has 12 got? Did 12 have blasphemy as well? I don't think 12 mentioned blasphemy, did it?
17, mystery Babylon.
12:3 just says, doesn't say blasphemy. But that's okay. So we'll link 13 and 17 together because the language is very similar. And we've got blasphemy in both. And yeah, they've got 7 heads and 10 horns. This also mentions scarlet. So we've got the scarlet detail in 17, which isn't there in the others. So this is now, it's a red beast. And verse 4 said, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in a hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. So this woman is holding a cup with fornication in, and we know that she's made, from verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, with this great whore in verse 1, and this great whore is sitting on many waters. So we know there's a whore, she's sitting on many waters, she's made the kings drink fornication. So
just to point out in verse 2 that the kings are already drunk.
Verse 2. So this is a good point. So here we've got the whore in verse 2, and she's committed fornication.
And they've already been made drunk, which is quite early.
With kings who are drunk. And this is going to help us place this as well. They're drunk with the wine of her fornication. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, so she's got. Now we don't know at this point, do we, if this is the same woman? Can we link it? So first of all, we've got the whore that sits on many waters. Oh, I didn't put that in, did I?
Which one are you reading?
I'm just reading the first. I'm assuming it's the same, but we haven't actually proved that it's the same, because it says, verse 1 says, come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore that sits on many waters. So she's sitting on many waters. She's committed fornication with the kings of the earth. So we're just trying to get the details of this power. And so he carried me, and now we get a difference. So verse 3, he carried me away in the wilderness. So we've got this overview at the beginning of this woman that's committed fornication with these kings. And now John's being carried back to see the history of this, I suppose. But it doesn't say the whore. It says, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet beast, full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So this woman is arrayed in purple and scarlet. So that's the whore. And then verse 4 is the woman. I think it's the same person, but have we proved that yet? The woman is purple and scarlet. So she's the same color as the beast up here. It's got scarlet beast, purple and scarlet. And decked with gold and precious stones, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations of filthiness of her fornication. So she's got a cup full of fornication.
I think it's the same woman because it says the woman. It didn't say a woman, it says the woman. So I think it's referring back to the first woman.
But it says a woman in verse 3. So that's referring, so when it says the woman in verse 4, we know that's the woman of 3, because that was a woman. So I don't know if we could say it's the whore at this point, even though we know it is.
Emma,
Yes.
I'm thinking when is it Daniel? No, John, when John introduces the story, he basically gives like a summary and tells us like what's happening, basically showing the judgment, right? Sort of like showing you where he is. And
Yeah.
then in verse 3, he then tells you that he's carried away in the spirit into the wilderness, so to a time period that is before where he is at that point. And then he sees a woman, sort of like being taken back to the beginning in order to understand where he is.
Right,
Which is,
so that's a good point. I think this is repeating a large in that sense. So we've got the first 2 verses, and Charity's saying this is where John gives an introduction. So this angel's giving John an introduction. Come, I'm going to show you the judgment of this great whore that sits on many waters, who's committed fornication with kings. So that's this, verse 2. So this is kind of like the summary, if you see summary all the way down here. Verse 2 is the whore. So this is the story we're going to see now, is this woman or whore that's committed fornication and sits on many waters, and we're going to see the judgment of her. And then, as Charity says, now John's carried away into the wilderness to see the details of that story. What does this look like? So we see that this woman is sitting on a scarlet beast. She's blasphemous. She's arrayed in purple and scarlet, and she's also got this cup full of fornication. So we see the link with fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So let's think about imagery here. So she's a counterfeit of the true woman, and the true woman symbolizes the true church. Does anybody know what this symbology of the forehead, the purple and scarlet, can you remember what that symbolizes, what that means?
Forehead.
The forehead, Mystery Babylon the Great is written on the forehead, purple and scarlet.
That's where you're sealed, isn't it?
That's where you're sealed, Natalie says. Yeah, absolutely, the forehead. But the imagery of the colours as well. Does anybody know
papacy, isn't it?
what purple and scarlet? So purple and scarlet are the colours of the papacy, but on a biblical level, what's scarlet?
was that not connected with the high priest in the sanctuary?
Yes. So Charity says the high priest in the sanctuary. So Natalie said scarlet is a symbol of sin, which it is, because we've got verses in though your sins be as scarlet. Does anyone know where that verse is?
We've got a hymn.
Isaiah chapter 1, I think.
Isaiah
18.
chapter 1, verse. Do you know the verse?
18, I think. Let me check.
18. I'll check that, yeah.
It is
Let me check.
Okay, okay. Scarlet. So though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be white as snow. So we know that scarlet is a symbol of sin. It's blood, the blood of Christ. It's the payment for the sins. The life is in the blood, which is red. Actually, that's not directly connected to scarlet.
Okay, in 6 it says it's drunken with the blood of the saints and the martyrs of Jesus.
Right, so that is drunk with blood as well, and that's maybe why it's red. So if verse 6 it says, saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, with the blood of the martyrs, and I saw her and wondered with great admiration. So she's drunk. Let's put that down. With blood of the martyrs. So she's killed the martyrs, we know that. And this links to 1260, because that's where the persecution we saw in Daniel 7 was the saints were being persecuted for 1260. And we know that she's drunk here. No, they're drunk, aren't they? The kings are drunk, but she's drunk as well. Was it the kings were drunk in the first one? with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So it's the inhabitants are drunk. So she's intoxicated everyone else.
Emma,
Yes.
I'm just wondering if this also is connecting or showing us that the woman, the colors and all that's connected with this woman are telling us that it's basically a counterfeit priest, if we can say, or counterfeit high priest.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is 118 for the scarlet. It's also I have a few references here also for purple. So if you want to say counterfeit, what does purple represent? Is there any
Royalty.
What's that?
Royalty.
Royalty, yeah. Can we
Wasn't it a purple robe that the Romans had put on Christ?
Absolutely, yeah. So do you know the verse for that? It's in the Gospels.
Yeah,
I'll give
I'll
it
have
so
to
we
look.
don't take up too much time. It's Mark 15:17. So Mark 15:17. And that talks about the purple robe being placed on Christ. We know Lydia was a seller of purple, and Lydia was associated with the church of Thyatira, which was the Dark Ages church.
Wasn't she a prophet?
Lydia, I'm not sure, Lydia, if she was a prophet or not, but it, I've got, what have I got here? Acts 16:14. I don't know what that says actually. Does somebody get that? Yeah, that's Lydia, and which is interesting. 16:14, and a certain woman named Lydia, a seller of purple of the city of Thyatira, which worshipped God, heard us, whose heart the Lord opened, and she attended unto the things which were spoken of Paul. So it's just interesting that she sells purple and she's attached to Thyatira, which was the church that symbolized the Dark Ages in the 7 churches. So, but purple, yeah, symbol of kings. Let's find a king's reference. I think it's Judges 8:26.
Purple raiment, that was on the king's.
Right, do you want to read that, Natalie? Judges 8:26.
Yeah. And the weight of golden earrings, that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, beside ornaments and collars, and purple raiment that was on the kings of Midian, and beside the chains that were about their camels' necks.
So here we see purple is on the kings of Midian. So that's Judges 8:26.
So you mean like it's on royalty?
Symbol of kingship, yeah. So this is the kingship, and of course Christ was a priest king, and that's the high priest symbolized the divinity of Christ and his kingship as well. So purple and scarlet are symbols of actually there's a scarlet robe as well that's put on Daniel. I think it's in, or is it put on Daniel? Daniel 5. Let me see what. So there's a reference to scarlet in Daniel 5. If we just want to check that. Daniel 5, there's a few verses actually. I've got 7, 16 and 29. I'll just put that up here, scarlet.
Also the sanctuary, the curtains. Some of the curtains have purple in.
16, 29 and verse 7 actually there. Oops, sorry, I'm running out of space. Rub the board in a minute. Okay, so does somebody want to read that one? You got that one, Susan? No, perhaps.
Where? Sorry.
Daniel 5, verse 7. And I think the other 2 verses say the same. So we've got 7, 16 and 29.
The king cried aloud to bring in the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers. And the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing and shall show me the interpretation thereof shall be clothed with scarlet and have a chain of gold about his neck, and shall be the 3rd ruler in the kingdom.
So, and that's 29 as well, then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck. So this is a symbol of importance as well as being a symbol of sin. It's or forgiving sin. But I think in this context, perhaps, like you say, the sanctuary has purple scarlet and another colour everywhere. What's the other colour that the sanctuary has that's not here?
Blue, I think.
Blue, absolutely. So I'm going to put it here. So you've got scarlet and purple and blue. And what does blue symbolize?
Obedience.
Obedience.
Obedience and law. So you can find verses for that. I don't think
I was going to say authority.
authority. Yeah, could be, but we know that it's obedience and law, and obviously all three has perhaps authority to do with power of kings. But the blue, let's just give you a reference for blue. Exodus 28. And Numbers 15. So Exodus 28, 3-8. I don't know what that is. You want to read the relevant bit? Have you got it, Natalie?
It's like Exodus 23.
Which one's got the blue in it? Yeah,
And thou shalt speak.
I'm not sure. Go on, Natalie. I'm sorry, go on, Debbie. I'm not right there.
Let's see. Are the bluest there?
Thou shalt speak unto all that are wise-hearted, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office.
Okay, stop there. Read verse 5 now.
Verse
Debbie.
5.
And they shall take gold and blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen.
So this is the high priest clothing in 28, 3-8. And so he's dressed in these three colours. And where's the head piece of the high priest as well? It should be here somewhere. Yeah, if you drop down to verse 36.
I shall make a plate of pure gold. Exodus 28, 36.
Yeah, so if you read 28, 36-38.
Oh, yeah.
So 36 says that they're going to engrave this plate of gold with holiness to the Lord. And then 38 says it shall be upon Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things, which the children of Israel shall hallow in all their holy gifts. And it shall be always upon his forehead, and they may be accepted before the Lord. So on Aaron's forehead, it's got holiness unto the Lord, and he's wearing blue as well. And here in Revelation 17, we see that the whore has Mystery Babylon. She got on her head. Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So it describes her character and it describes his character. So, and we know that the forehead is where, as Natalie said, is where the seal of God is, which we know is a symbol of character. So it's a representation, a false representation of a priest, as Charity said, the high priest. And the difference is that there's no obedience. There's no obedience to law from this entity. So they're against God's law.
I like the blue related to law. There's no
The blue.
law.
The other reference to blue, which we know about from garments, is Numbers 15, 38 and 39. Numbers 15, 38-39, which is talks about the blue border.
So a borders are gone.
Yeah. So, and Ellen White talks about this, I think. I don't know whether it's Ellen White or it's historical, or does it say it here?
It says that, we know the fringe is to remember the law.
Yeah, because it says, shall speak unto the children of Israel and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generations, that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue. And it shall be unto you for a fringe, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, and that you seek not after your own heart and your own eyes, after which you used to go a whoring. So there's some contrast here between being a whore and being disobedient, or being obedient and reminded of the commandments of the Lord by looking at the blue on their garments. So every time they looked at their clothes, they were reminded, we're servants of God, we need to be obedient. And it was a visible representation of the law, the blue. So yeah, and whereas this the whore hasn't got the blue, she's only got scarlet and purple, because she wants the power and authority but without obedience, which is the Christian walk, isn't it? People want to profess to be Christians. It's 4 colours including
She also
gold.
has gold, by the way.
The gold. She has gold. Now we don't want to go there, really, do we? Because gold is great and love.
No, I'm just saying she also has gold, but not blue, of course.
She has gold, the riches of the earth, I think, as well. So, of course, we have gold in the sanctuary too, because true riches is, if we should be rich and increase with goods, with faith and love. But
I think blue is actually in the sanctuary as well.
Yeah.
Because if you read Exodus 26:4, it talks about loops of blue upon the edge of one of the curtains.
Yeah.
So that's in the sanctuary as well.
Yeah.
The
It's-
counterfeit does have love for the fallen earth.
Yeah, and there's a false, yeah.
Isn't it funny, the blue law?
The love for sin as well.
Yeah.
The blue law. Blue law. Okay, so we're running out of time actually. Okay. So we had the references for the forehead as well. We just mentioned them without, I guess, Exodus 28 with the high priest holding us to the Lord, but also Revelation 14, 1 and 4, which is the seal of God in their foreheads.
And Emma, we can say that Exodus 28:15 is also, when it talks about the breastplate of the judgment, or something about cunning work, the ephod, I think that's what priests wore.
Yeah.
On their chest, it talks about blue on that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of symbology in it's packed in here. In Revelation 17, it has a lot of symbols that we're expected to know from elsewhere, I think. And
in the literal sense, Emma, can you find blue anywhere in Catholicism?
No, because they're the
not as far as I
council.
know. No, they all wear red. The cardinals wear red, and the bishops wear blue. Scarlet, don't they? Was it the way around? Sorry,
So
red.
no blue represents.
Purple. I had it down somewhere actually. What did they arrayed in purple? The purple and scarlet colour, the golden precious stones and pearls picture the magnificence. So Ellen White has a quote here. This is GC 382.2. This is a really good passage, actually. Maybe we'll finish on this passage which talks about Revelation 17. I didn't want to go there quite yet because of we're trying to work this out without Ellen White telling us all the answers. But even then, we're not sure if we're saying the same thing today anyway. 382.2. So this passage is good to go away and have a look at, actually, all about Babylon and what it is. So maybe we'll close up by looking at this. So Ellen White talks about, obviously, the truth being symbolized by Christ and the church. So Christ is marrying the church, who's a virtuous woman. So if you look at this whole section in Great Controversy, it starts in 381. She says, in Revelation 14, the first angel is followed by a second proclaiming. So I'm just reading, sorry, from GC 381.1. So we'll start in 381. So I recommend you go away and look at this passage and perhaps open it now. I don't want to copy and paste everything in the chat, but in Revelation 14, the first angel is followed by a second, proclaiming Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The term Babylon is derived from Babel and signifies confusion. So let's put this down here. Babylon equals. So what I want us to do actually for our homework, I suppose, is to go away and look at what Ellen White says about Babylon, what we're thinking about Babylon in terms of this imagery of this woman on a beast, because the woman is Babylon, but she's on the beast, so it's all part of the same picture. And we haven't gone into the details of the beast that was and is not, which is I want to do, but maybe we'll do that at a second study. But in the meantime, I want us to start thinking about what our understanding of Babylon is now. And if we're going to take these principles from Ellen White, we will, but whether we're going to apply it to the papacy, I guess, is the question in our time. What do we see that looking like now? And how is it connected to the papacy, if at all, or if it is?
Male headship.
Yeah, exactly. So we see patriarchy, but it's not the same things we were looking for before. So the term Babylon is derived from Babel and signifies confusion. It is employed in scripture to designate the various forms of false or apostate religion. So it says it's false or apostate religion. Now, I know I've read this before where Ellen White talks about it can't be the papacy because she fell a long time ago. I'm thinking, was Babylon ever not fallen? You know, when you start thinking about the logic of
They've
that.
never stood, so they could never have fallen.
So how could they fall? I know it's like a bit of an oxymoron, because we know that Babylon was never standing for truth and righteousness, and she makes that point about the Protestants. But I don't, she does that right here. Let's see. So it is employed in scripture to designate the various forms of false or apostate religion. In Revelation 17, Babylon is represented as a woman, a figure which is used in the Bible as the symbol of a church, a virtuous woman representing a pure church, and a vile woman, an apostate church. So she says it's a vile woman represents Babylon.
State church.
Which is apostate religion. Yeah. Or church, I could put church there. In the Bible, the sacred and enduring character of, let me just see, sorry. Let me see the board in, not quite. In the Bible, the sacred and enduring character of the relation that exists between Christ and the church is represented by the union of marriage. So I'll skip down there. So it quotes Jeremiah and it quotes Corinthians about us, the church being a pure woman, a chaste virgin. I know it's so sexist, but we just have to get through it. I'll marry you forever in righteousness, judgment, and loving kindness. So God promises, pledges themselves that, what does it say? Actually, let's read it. The Lord has joined their people to themselves by a solemn covenant. The promise, God promising to be our God, and us pledging ourselves to be God's and God's alone. So there's this faithfulness on both parts, that we're going to be united and committed to each other. God declares, I will betroth unto thee, I will betroth thee unto me forever. And I am married unto you. Paul employs the same figure in the New Testament. I've espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ. So there's this idea of being pure as being faithful. The unfaithfulness of the church to Christ in permitting her confidence and affection to be turned from God and allowing the love of worldly things to occupy the soul is likened to the violation of the marriage vow. So what's the problem here? Need a bit of space.
They don't understand marriage.
So I'm just going to put it here. The Bible is, so what's our issue? If the unfaithfulness of the church to Christ is permitting her confidence and affection to be turned from God. So unfaithfulness is where confidence stroke affection is turned from God and allowing the love of worldly things to occupy the soul.
You'd say faith as well. It's the loss of faith.
From God to love of the world, to love of
Worldly things.
worldly things occupy soul is likened to the violation of the marriage vow, love of worldly things. So that's violating our vow to Christ if we have a love of worldly things which supplants or takes the place of confidence and affection in God. And confidence, I think you could say faith there, I think.
Yeah. Because confidence is faith, really.
If you have confidence in
Yeah,
someone,
faith
you
is
believe in them,
something
you trust in
unseen.
them. Faith, affection, turn from God to love of worldly things. So I think the question I was asking is what that looks like for us. Because, yeah, because of our message changing somewhat, does it have an impact on what we see as, what does it mean to have our confidence and our affection turn from God to love of worldly things? And perhaps we're in danger now that we are looking more at worldly things in a sense of politics and articles about feminism and just worldly people's ideas.
I don't think it's
that we can lose
still
faith.
both, though. Yeah, I know. I see what you mean
Mhm.
there, because you lose direction of the Bible.
Yeah.
But I still think that actually means what it means: worldliness, covetousness, going after worldly things and not after godly things. It doesn't mean going and looking at articles.
No, so
Yeah.
can you hear Natalie?
I was just saying that I think it still means what it means. When I agree what Emma says about now that we're looking at all these articles, we're not looking at the Bible as much, and like today, this is a blessing. We'll come back at the Bible, but I think it means covetousness and worldliness. It doesn't mean we're not allowed to look at what's going on in the world politically.
No, it doesn't mean we're not allowed to look at it. No, not at all. But I think the danger is that we can lose our way, I suppose, with anything. And it's on top of all the other things we know about, like money, going after worldly ambition and allowing that to take our time and energy over spiritual things. So there's a place for all those things, many of them. Well, everything probably. We need money, we need jobs. What were you saying? Was that Debbie?
Yeah, I was just going to say the difference between truth and error could come in there as well, I think.
Yeah, and it certainly it just seems there's a lot more to think about than there was. So we've got to do all the things, not got to, but we still believe that we need to shun a lot of the things we shunned before, like we're not going to the disco, or we're not, the kind of things Ellen White talks about in the reform parts of the vows. But at the same time, it's more subtle perhaps that we can lose confidence and affection because of the focus that we're having on all these things that are happening in the world. It's a lot. The politics, the wickedness, the domestic abuse, a lot of the things that we're looking at are quite distressing, distracting, perhaps faith destroying. But so it's quite, perhaps it's easier now to have your confidence and affection turned away from God in some ways.
Further down,
and that's violating the vow. Yeah, it's adultery. The sin of Israel in departing from the Lord is presented unto this figure, and the wonderful love of God which they have despised is touchingly portrayed. I swear unto thee and entered into a covenant with thee, saith the Lord God, and thou becamest mine, and thou wast exceeding beautiful, and thou didst prosper into a kingdom, and thy renown went forth among the heathen for thy beauty. Oh, keeps thinking sexism, for it was perfect through my comeliness which I had put upon thee, but thou didst trust in thine own beauty and played the harlot because of thy renown. As a wife treacherously departed from her husband, so have you dealt treacherously with me. I wonder if we were to rewrite this, how we do it.
Well, it could be either any gender.
O house of Israel, saith the Lord. Could be like try and make it ungendered, my partner. As a partner that committed adultery with taketh strangers instead of her partner. Yeah, so there's unfaithfulness there. And I suppose the only way to describe it is you trusted in your own beauty. It sounds so like Lucifer. So this is what happened with Lucifer.
Wisdom.
Your beauty was lifted up, your wisdom, and you thought you had it by yourself. So, and I think that's the danger now that, we have so many people that don't believe in God, that we think that we are capable of doing all this by ourselves.
Individual work.
Individual, independent.
On your phone.
Is that the gurus?
The gurus.
The idea of the gurus. The gurus on the phone. In the New Testament, language very similar is addressed to professed Christians who seek the friendship of the world above the favour of God. Says the Apostle James, ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. That's quite difficult, isn't it? Does anybody have any? I don't know, because the way we used to see that was like isolation. I think that's how I used to see it. Isolation. You can't be friends with anyone in the world. You can't go anywhere with anyone. You can't step in a pub. You can't, you can't on one level, unless your motive's really pure and you're collecting money for ADRA or something. That was ages ago. But that whole thing about demarcation between us and the world, that it's wrong to do this, this, and this, and this, and we can't go anywhere near it.
I'm still there.
Natalie says she's still there. I think this is something where obviously people went the other way, went very liberal. We went sort of like, do what you want, wear what you want, go where you want. And then there's those boundaries that are still in place. But I think that our attitude towards those things has relaxed, which I think is a good thing. And I think that's where we can blur lines if we're not careful. So I think it's, I wouldn't voluntarily choose to go into a nightclub, but
the angels won't follow.
The angels won't follow. We've got all those pictures still that we're carrying, that this is how bad the world is, and you're going to get contaminated and you're going to get dirty. So, but to go out now for a drink, a coffee, a drink with friends might be okay now, when it wasn't before. It didn't feel okay just to be with worldly people for the sake of it, unless you're on a mission and you're witnessing to them. And now I guess we're still doing the same thing in a way, but our mission isn't to make them into Christians. Maybe it still is. I don't know. How do people see that? How do you feel about that tension between this whole thing about you're an adulteress or adulterer if you're friends with the world? How do you?
I'm just thinking. Yeah. I'm just thinking that, I don't know. For me, with the context of what's being spoken of about Babylon and confusion, I'm thinking it has more to do with understanding what Babylon is, right? And with the errors that are being identified, like for example, where she speaks about Babylon being an apostate church, right? And you have to understand, okay, what is that apostasy, right? Is it going out and having coffee with people who are not Adventists or, you know, things like that? And I think like understanding those ideas about what Babylon is can also help us to place ourselves or to place what the world is in this context. Because for me, like how I'm understanding it, the world is basically the ideas, the competing ideas that are there, that are taking God's people from God's kingdom into Satan's kingdom.
So at the root of that is a rejection of God, isn't there?
Yes, because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's speaking about the whole idea of marriage, right? So with marriage, and marriage being someone being unfaithful is basically taking your affections and breaking that covenant that you have with someone and putting your affections to someone else whilst you are in marriage with someone. So basically what that does for me, when you're looking at in terms of God's kingdom or God's religion and ideas that we have about God's kingdom, there's certain things that we can hold on to, thinking that we are still in God's kingdom when we are actually in Satan's kingdom. Like, for example, what Richard said, we hold on to certain ideas of patriarchy and all of that. And this is what worldliness is, as opposed to how the people we interact with or the places that we go to.
No, and I suppose I was making that more of a personal, practical level. I was bringing in reform vows there, and I think that's still applicable in some ways because we did see that as a violation of our religion to go and, I mean, I don't want to use the coffee necessarily, but to do things before that, we just mixing with worldlings unless there's a purpose behind it, unless there's but now there seems the purpose is, I don't know if this is a sidetrack from the argument about Babylon. So I get it's a false religion. False apostate religion. What does that look like? So now if we say it's headship inequality, so Natalie's itching to speak. Go on.
I want to, because I want to stay on the bit you're talking about, about going out with people
Going
and
out.
stuff. But before you were talking about adultery, we compared and contrast this, or compared it actually to marriage.
Yeah.
And if your husband started going out with a friend a lot and spending more time with them, would that be right? So if you compare, that's for me is spending not enough time with God and going out for coffee with friends who are not of the world. And bit by bit, it can deter you away. Because if you say on the GC 3822, if I can just read something, it said, it was by departure from the Lord and alliance with the heathen that the Jewish church became a harlot, and the Rome corrupting herself in like manner by seeking the support of worldly powers to receive like condemnation. So you can compare the Jewish and the Rome and how they fell, and you can also compare marriage to also how you can come away from your wife or your husband if you spend too much time with others, and you can come away from God if you spend too much time with people in the world who can draw you away, like you said there, slow, little by little. You know, your business can do that, money can do that, friends can do that. So I think we shouldn't go too far fundamentalist, but we shouldn't also throw it all away. This has some meaning to be careful of who you're giving your affections to, keep your faith and your affection towards God at all times.
And I suppose what happened with our message on one of those things was you said keep your affection towards God at all times, and we've got intention.
Golden rule.
We've got the tension, but the golden rule between, love your neighbour as yourself, that your neighbour is in the image of God, that they are God in the flesh, that you're to treat them like Christ. You've done this unto the least of my people, you've done it to me. There's that picture, but there's also that if you love father, mother, brother, sister more than me, you're not worthy of me. So there's that whole tension between loving people who are not Christian, not following God, and spending time with them, treating them with equality, and being distracted or being drawn away from God, and knowing that you can't have a really intimate, close relationship with people, perhaps on a marriage level, if we're talking about marriage, with people that haven't got the same ideology or the same mindset. And that's what it's referring to, as opposed to, because we should love our relatives who don't believe in God.
Yeah.
We should love
I-
people.
I'm just thinking the same as you're speaking, that for me personally, it doesn't make sense, because for one, I would spend much more time with other people at work, because we work all throughout the day. You're seeing these people at work, you spend much more time with them, you talk to them more than you do your partner at home. And would that be something that leads you away from your marriage, or it's something deeper than just spending time with people?
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be, because we all in that situation, I think, or most of us, a lot of us are, that we do spend a lot of time with people who are not our close relatives.
Yeah, maybe it's your spare time, the time that should be with God, not so, like 70% with God, 30% with those who are not with God.
So Natalie saying maybe it's your spare time, yeah. And these are things that I think we've wrestled with. But let's...
Yeah, just to let you know, Emma, it's just 12 minutes past 12 now.
And we're running way over, so I'll just finish with this paragraph, because I know we started it. I think, which one did you just read, Natalie?
It was just the bottom of 382.2, so you want to read all?
Okay, so wait a minute. So I was beginning of 381.3. The sin of Israel in departing from the Lord is presented under this figure, and the wonderful love of God, which thou hast despised, is touchingly portrayed. So it talks about a wife treacherously departed from her husband. So have you dealt treacherously with me, O house of Israel, said the Lord, as a wife commits adultery, which takes strangers instead of her husband. In the New Testament, language very similar is addressed to professed Christians who seek the friendship of the world above the favour of God. So we read that, sorry, the adulterers and adulteresses. And then I just wanted to finish with the last two bits of that. Just maybe that first sentence of that one. Yeah, it's just go away and read these 3 paragraphs yourself, because it's quite good. But this one, the woman of Revelation 17 is described as arrayed in purple and scarlet colour and decked with gold, etc., having the cup of abomination, and upon her forehead mystery Babylon. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. So our logic, just to finish that point about the wilderness, is that John is carried into the wilderness, but we're going to mark it as the end of the 1260, because the kings and the woman are drunk. So they've had a long time to do this work. And the fact that they're drunk, we would mark that at 1798. So this is the end of the Dark Ages, because they're drunk with all this work that they've done
before.
So it's just around the time of the end. And that's how we need to place Revelation 17 when we talk about the beast that was, is, and will be. This is around 1798 when John is talking. So that's why we need to place it, I think, because we have a time chronology in that chapter. We have to know where we are, where to put it. So the Dark Ages 538, 1798, but then the end of that time period. So she marks that too. She says, I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints. Babylon is further declared to be that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. The power that for so many centuries maintained despotic sway over the monarchs of Christendom is Rome. The purple and scarlet colour, the gold, vividly picture the magnificence and more than kingly pomp affected by the haughty see of Rome, and no other power could be so truly declared drunken with the blood of the saints. So that church, which has so cruelly persecuted the followers of Christ, Babylon is also charged with the sin of unlawful connection with the kings of the earth. So there's unlawful connection here. So this is church and state. So we know it's false apostate religion, it's confusion, and it's unlawful connection. With the kings of the earth. With kings, I'll just put with kings. Just wanted to get these points about
presidents nowadays.
Leaders and presidents, kings, governors and rulers. That's testimonies to ministers. It was by departure from the Lord and alliance with the heathen that the Jewish church became a harlot, and that's what Natalie was reading. And Rome, corrupting herself in like manner by seeking the support of worldly powers, receives a like condemnation. So it's departing from the Lord and alliance with the heathen. So unlawful connection, alliance with heathen. Heathen, yeah. That they depart from God, because then they're answerable to someone else. I think that's the reason you're answerable to these people instead of God. So then you can't follow your conscience. There's something about liberty of conscience. Babylon is said to be the mother of harlots. By her daughters must be symbolized churches that cling to her doctrines and traditions and follow her example of sacrificing the truth and the approval of God in order to form an unlawful alliance with the world. The message of Revelation 14, announcing the fall of Babylon, must apply to religious bodies that were once pure and have become corrupt. So she talks about them once being pure and becoming corrupt with that message. Since this message follows the warning of the judgment, it must be given in the last days. Therefore, it cannot refer to the Roman Church alone, for that church has been in a fallen condition for many centuries. Furthermore, in the 18th chapter of Revelation, the people of God are called upon to come out of Babylon. According to this scripture, many of God's people must still be in Babylon. And in what religious bodies are the greater part of the followers of Christ now to be found? Without doubt, in the various churches professing this Protestant faith. I'm going to stop there. So she makes the point about Protestants. And the last bit, many of the Protestant churches are following Rome's example of iniquitous connection with the kings of the earth. The state churches by their relation to secular governments, and other denominations by seeking the favour of the world. And the term Babylon or confusion may be appropriately applied to these bodies, all professing to derive their doctrines from the Bible, yet divided into almost innumerable sects with widely conflicting creeds and theories. Besides a sinful union with the world, the churches that separated from Rome present other of her characteristics. So she goes on to talk about other characteristics. So perhaps we can go and look at those another time and also tie in that with this definition of Babylon when we look at our time, just to understand how it's working. So hopefully we've had a bit of revision there about Revelation and Revelation 17, and perhaps an impetus to go away and study these things in the light of the Trump presidency and what's happening in our day. I know we didn't make any application, but I think it's useful to lay out the history again and just see if we know the history and if we can really do line upon line with it to see what it actually means.
If you do a part 2 of the was, is.
Do a part 2 of the was, is, and shall be. It is not yet. I know it might be now, it might be yet. No, it's fulfilling now. So yeah, I think we probably need to part 2 to continue with this relationship with the beast and the woman and who that woman is and what that looks like. So that's for next time. Don't know when it is, but probably coming sooner than we think. People keep not doing. Let's close with prayer. Dear loving God, we thank you for these words of inspiration which encourage our hearts and inspire us to see how you know the end from the beginning and how you've prepared your church for what is happening on the earth. Help us to relook at these things, to understand them in the light of current events, and to apply them properly to our dispensation. We know that Ellen White made application to her time, and we pray that we would be able to glean principles and ideas from these passages that would help us as we navigate the events that we are walking through in real time. We pray that you would keep our eyes open, help us to be faithful, not to be distracted, not to have our confidence and our affection turned from you. Help us to stay our faith upon your word and to hold on to the cords that you are letting down to us. Thank you that your coming is near. Help us to really believe that it's at the door and to order our lives after that effect. Thank you now for the Sabbath. May we get the rest and the blessing that you want us to have. Please continue to guide and lead each one of us in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. I shall stop.
Amen.
Can't find the record button. There it is. They've changed the setup of Zoom.